Hi, I'm Jessica Hanslechek Treadwell with the Wichita Foundation. This is our professional advisor video series where we sit down with trusted members of our Professional Advisor Council. These are experts in their field right here in Wichita that we know, we work with, and we truly trust. These folks are helping people every day with their finances, their legacies, and their community impact. Our hope is that these videos are helpful for our fund holders and our donors, but also for nonprofits and anyone looking to make a difference in their community. Today's topic is Trusts 101, and we're joined with Cameron Sellers from Emprise Bank. Hi, Cameron.
Thank you for having me, Jessica.
Of course.
Yeah.
As the VP and Senior Wealth Advisor, I'm sure you have a lot of information that you could share with us on trusts. First, there's so much difference and yet similarities between trusts and wills. Can you start by telling me how they're different?
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you having me on. I love the Wichita Foundation. They do a lot of good here in town. There's a few different distinctions between a will, so a last will and testament, and let's call it a revocable trust first. Both of them accomplish somewhat of the same thing. The grantor or the individual is designating what they want to happen with their assets after they pass. Both will accomplish that. The distinction between the two is the will, you designate if you have minor children who you want the guardians to be. And the will goes through the probate process. So that's one distinction, unless you have proper titling, which could be a whole nother segment in its own. But a revocable trust, one of the main benefits is probate avoidance. After you set up a revocable trust, you title assets in it or have a transfer on death to the revocable trust, you'll avoid probate, which is a good thing because probate is costly, it could be lengthy, and it's a public process. So anything that goes through probate is public. Then you go into the trust a little deeper because that's the revocable trust side, which means it could be amended at any time because the individual slash grantor who sets it up can amend it. Irrevocable trust is just like it sounds. It's not to be amended. It can in certain situations. So an irrevocable trust used during life could be used for various reasons, and we can dive into that a little later on, or irrevocable trust could be created upon the passing of someone. So it can come into play at different stages in life.
Okay, well, when should someone consider setting up a trust? What stage in life would that?
Yeah, and it's kind of intimidating to think about. Most folks they think of a trust and they think, "Oh my gosh, that's a lot to undertake. It's complicated," but they're fully customizable. I mentioned one reason before. You want to avoid probate. You want to make sure it's the
Mhm.
easiest and cleanest it can be upon your passing, because your family has enough to worry about after you lose a loved one. So it just is one of the easier ways for it to past your family. And we think about the control and the customization. There's a lot more you can do within a revocable trust to customize and make sure everything's set up properly. One piece people don't talk about a lot in a revocable trust is incapacity planning. So if someone becomes incapacitated, and that does happen in life, the trust manages your financial affairs for you on your behalf. The successor trustee does. So it's a shell that protects your assets and it manages your financial affairs. So it's a little cleaner than the other methodologies. Then folks with blended families, it's a benefit just to make sure your kids get the certain assets you want if something
Mhm.
happens. If you're charitably inclined, there's a benefit to that, reducing estate taxes, and you're getting in kind of the weeds a little bit. Then one important factor is if you have a dependent with special needs, something happens to you, making sure those assets are protected upon your passing and that your loved one is taken care of when you're not there.
Is there, through all of that, is there any one thing that people should know before they create a trust?
Don't be intimidated. Talk to your, trusted advisors, and that might be your accountant or financial advisor. You may already have an attorney, so just talking on the front end on what is important to you. You just got to know, what do you want to happen to your assets if something happens to you? And how do we get that accomplished? And, I'll speak to another piece that's important on the trust side is finding the right attorney. Because there's a lot of different flavors of attorneys out there, and we're lucky in Wichita. There's a lot of great firms too, and there's a lot of different price ranges, and they all specialize in different areas, and there's different costs associated with that, and there's a wide variety of ages too, just like our doctors out there, where
Yeah.
everyone's having to find a new doctor because so and so's retiring. So just finding the right fit, and I recommend at least interviewing 2 to 3 attorneys before sitting down and going through the formal process, because it could be you're just doing the package deal, and that really is power of attorney documents. They'll do the will and they'll set up the trust for a package deal. And a lot of folks do that in town for a reasonable price. But if you need something more complex, then there's firms that help with that. So just
Sure.
picking the right attorney is important.
Sure, absolutely. So, are there benefits of a charitable trust for donors and nonprofits?
Yes, and I'll go back to the last point there that, part of setting up the trust, if you're charitably inclined, is getting, that charitable entity involved a little sooner.
Mm,
Because there's a benefit on what assets you put in a charitable trust. You could be doing tax planning at the same time as your charitable giving, and that can happen during life or after death. And you just got to have that team involved, your attorney, and you need to be on the right same page, and so does the charitable entity. And the community foundation has a lot of different ways to gift: direct gifting, gifting to one of the funds, donor advised funds, just communication and knowing what's important to you. And those charitable trusts are powerful. They can go on forever, or they can go on for a certain period of time. They could benefit, individuals or family members, on the front end, and the charitable entity on the back end, or vice versa.
sure.
So it goes back to the foundation. What's important to you, and how do you accomplish those goals?
Sure. A lot of times we have donors that will want to make a gift to the community
Mm-hmm.
foundation or to nonprofits, but we don't hear about it until after the
Mm-hmm.
passing of the individual. And it makes it really difficult to make sure that we keep the donor's
Mm-hmm.
intent because if the nonprofit isn't doing that project
Mm-hmm.
anymore, or if the donor really narrows down how
Mm-hmm.
that gift can be used. So being able to be a part of that process
Mm-hmm.
from the get go really can be a beautiful thing because we can't talk to them or thank them for that
Mm-hmm.
gift afterwards by nature of the
Yeah.
gift. How do you and trust advisors work with community foundations when they're setting up a
Mhm.
trust?
Well, it's just like you spoke about. You got to meet on the front end. So that's the best way to do it. I'm sure it doesn't happen as much as it should. It doesn't in our space either. When the bank's listed as successor trustee, some stuff just pops up, and we wish we could have had a moment with that grantor and individual. But really, it's a team approach when it comes down to it. Step one, what's important to you. Step two, build the team around you, and the financial advisor, the attorney, you have your accountant. Then getting most of those people in the same room.
Mm,
I think that's important because there may be certain assets that are more efficient to gift into a charitable trust or direct to the foundation. So there's different strategies that could be implemented, especially with a lot of people's balance sheet. A lot of people have complex affairs that if they just got everyone in the same room, the community foundation could have received that gift in the most efficient manner, and it would have been carried out exactly how the grantor, the donor intended. But if you don't get all those people on the same page, it's hard to have that level of efficiency.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Can trusts be used to support multiple generations or
Mm.
multiple causes over time?
Yes. And there's different time periods to both of those.
Okay.
So a charitable trust, I mentioned before, can go on forever. So if it's just
Right.
benefiting charitable entities, that thing can go on forever. We have trusts that have been in operation for 60 plus years that will be continuing long after my time. which is fantastic. But trusts that benefit individuals, Kansas has rules against perpetuity in state statute where it can only go on for a certain period of time. So there's a different answer to both of those, but you could go across state lines to some of our neighboring states where they don't have rules against perpetuity, where you can set up what's called a dynasty trust that benefits multiple generations and does not have to terminate. But there's, of course, with all good things, there's tax implications to the planning piece. So just once again, having the right team in place, going back to the foundation.
That is a lot
Mhm.
of information, but
Mhm.
incredible foundation of trust information. Thank you, Cameron, so much.
You're welcome.
I hope that helped spark some new ideas. If it was helpful for you, or please feel free to share this video. If you have any questions or are interested in partnering with the Wichita Foundation, do reach out. And thank you so much for watching.